everybody, welcome to this week's podcast. Got a bunch of stuff to talk about, so I'm going to just jump right in. First up, it looks like homebrew developers have corrected a bug in Mario 64 that have existed since the game was first released. Apparently, whenever Mario catches fire, there's some solid black pixels that come out that were supposed to be transparent. So there's now a patch that does nothing other than fix this and makes smoke look like smoke and not just a bunch of odd black pixels falling out of Mario's butt. So it's kind of an interesting thing and certainly a neat patch, but I always love to see quality of life improvements like this. Some of my favorite ROM hacks for some of my favorite games are so subtle, but they do add small things to it like this. So if you're a Mario 64 fan, definitely check this one out. Heck, even if you just check out the post just to see how the difference between the smoke and the pixels look. Greg has just listed the aftermarket NES shells on laserbear.net for the RetroUSB AVS wireless controller. So many acronyms there. But I've talked about this a lot before, so I'll try to make this super quick if anybody is unfamiliar. And I also explained it in pretty great detail in the post as well. But essentially, the AVS controller is a wireless controller designed by Brian, the same person who did the actual AVS console. And it's a high-end wireless controller. It's been tested with some of the top Tetris players in the world. He hooked up different equipment to be able to test to the millisecond how much latency it has on average. I say on average because if you use any of these things next to a microwave while it's running, it's going to be different than, in an empty hall or something like that. But generally speaking, they perform incredibly well, and they have clicky buttons, so on-off switches instead of rubber pads. And it does change the feel of the controller as well as the original Batwing design. So when I was initially testing it, I tried to fit it inside a real NES shell, and everything changed. It just felt so much more familiar. The Batwing design didn't jam into the side of my hands. So I talked to Greg about it, and he, of course, immediately whipped up a 3D printed design that's a replacement that is super easy to install. Just unbolt everything from the old one, put it in this new one, and very, very carefully peel off the tape from the rechargeable battery. And then I just used the same tape that was on the initial battery, or the original battery, and just kind of restuck it inside the new case. And that was it. I mean, it's about as easy as one could imagine, and I love the feel of the new case. It feels just like a slightly thicker NES controller, but I don't really ever feel the thickness difference. And those clicky buttons that felt weird, I think this part's probably subconscious, but because it's in a familiar shape, I no longer notice the clicky buttons. I imagine if somebody was in the room with me, they'd probably yell at me and go, "Why the hell does your controller make so much noise?" But I don't notice it all anymore. It just feels like a really awesome wireless NES controller. So if you're in it for the best possible wireless controller for NES at the moment, this is definitely one to look at. The 8BitDo 2.4 gig RF wireless are coming out in June. And they've had a good history of RF wireless controllers. But they've also had some things over the years. I've had D-pad issues on about half of my 8BitDo controllers, and their Bluetooth stuff. For retro, all Bluetooth I think is too laggy. So if you want something that's affordable and it just works, I'm sure the 8BitDo solution is going to be fine. But if you want to skip all that and immediately go to a solution that's been tested and used by some of the pickiest players in the world, this one's definitely for you. It's a big price difference, but I think hardcore NES fans will know right away if this is for them, or if they just want, or just people that want a casual wireless solution. I think the 8BitDo one's going to be very good, and I'll certainly test it when it comes out. Steve from RetroTech just posted a video that shows how to calibrate the geometry on your average PVM. And this is a video that I definitely want to share with everybody because I always stress the importance of making sure your RGB monitor, or I guess even any CRT monitor, is in really good condition before doing any kind of calibration. Because if you spend all day trying to get everything right and it needed a cap replacement, not only would you never get it perfect, but then when you did the cap replacement, you would have to do that all over again, and it could have set it way off. In fact, your TV or monitor probably could have been very close to calibrated anyway if you just left it alone and then replaced the caps. So the reason I like this video and I like talking about geometry is you're probably going to have to reset this every time you make any adjustments, including possibly even switching between like Genesis and Super Nintendo if you're looking for, a perfect geometry grid. And it's quick and easy compared to all the other things that you could be doing to a monitor, and it's something that you could feel free to just do, and then if you do a cap replacement, you're only going to lose 2 or 3 minutes trying to set it back the way it was. Now, the only thing I will always stress, just in case, is make sure to write down every single setting that you change, just in case. You never know, and you don't want to end up screwing something up because you put a setting way off and then you don't know how to reset everything. Steve actually has a bunch of really great videos on CRT repair and all that stuff. I don't know why I haven't talked about some of them. This one, I definitely, the moment I saw it, I got excited because I said, okay, cool, a quick tutorial for somebody that just wants to do basic geometry calibration. This is great. He's got a bunch of other stuff that's very helpful as well. It's the only things that I didn't purposely retweet or anything like that were stuff that's a little in-depth that I'd really like to sit down with Steve and get him in front of the camera and do an interview. And I guess we'd scheduled to meet up relatively soon, but with everything going on, I'm sure that's going to get delayed. So lots of love for Steve. I'll start promoting the channel more. I just want to make sure to do it properly because I don't want to just throw a video like this out there and have people skip to the calibration part and kind of skip all the other important stuff that goes in between. I'm not pointing fingers. I do the same damn thing myself sometimes when I just want the answer to something. I just want to make sure that, if you hear any of this information through a more general site like this, you know exactly what to expect and what not to do. Whereas if you're already subscribed to Steve's channel, you probably already understand what's going on before you even start the video, meaning you understand safety, you understand which stuff to be careful about and things like that. So definitely check out his channel. I'll be covering a lot more of his stuff and hopefully be able to sit down with him in person soon and really just talk shop about all of these different monitors and work that he's doing. The creator of the Neo Geo UniBIOS has just made version 4.0 free to use for personal use only. So a little short history on this. The UniBIOS is an excellent tool for people on both AES or MVS Neo Geos that want to use original carts from different regions, want access to dip settings, and access more MVS modes in the AES carts. It's really just a super handy tool, and it's something that everybody that, at least in my opinion, every Neo Geo owner that uses original carts should probably look into. People with ROM carts might not need to because a lot of these features are already built in, but it's just an amazing tool to have if you're a fan of Neo Geo original hardware. Now, up until now, you'd had to have paid for the 4.0 BIOS, but it looks like Razula is just giving that away for personal use. And once again, I always like to follow the rules that people set. Open source is always thrown around there, even though a lot of stuff isn't open. It's more like freeware. And that's kind of what this is more freeware. So if you have your own programmer and chips, you could make one for yourself, make some for your buddies and give them away, but you just can't resell them for profit. Anybody that wants to buy them, I think, can still purchase them through the website. Or if not, just check out the UniBIOS website, which is linked in the post to get more info on that. So I think it's amazing that this is just given away to people to use like this. Very cool of Razula to do that. And if you have a Neo Geo, definitely at least look into this because I think it's something that with all the features combined in, it's probably something everybody could use. It looks like some developers are back at making MSX to SMS conversions. There's been some talk on the SMS Power forums about this, and there's now a different technique being used that's kind of the same as some other Taiwanese and Korean companies were using many years ago in order to make their creations to take those MSX games and get them working as original SMS carts. So many acronyms. There's two ways to look at stuff like this. You could say, well, with the Mister out there nowadays, isn't this useless? You could just play your MSX games on that, which is not unfair. But the other thing is, it's just always so cool, at least in my opinion, that you have a game that was designed for one console that you're able to hack it to work on another. And the main reason is because they both run on the same Z80 processor. So the hacking would have to involve things like, I think, just memory and controller ports and stuff like that. Basically the differences in the console. And anybody that's been following this channel for a while knows how I'm kind of always fascinated by weird ports like this, especially the Game Gear to SMS games, which are a bunch of games that were exclusive to the Game Gear, never released anywhere else, that people had ported to work on the SMS. They changed the color palette, as well as changed the viewable screen area. So there are some games that really just I mean, I think it was Tails Adventure. It just felt like a really awesome conversion. Most of them were just kind of proof of concepts, but some were really well done. And, I think the MSX conversions are kind of working on this, are in the same light. They're well done, they're playable, they work on real hardware. So while this might not be so exciting if you already own a Mister and all that stuff, if you appreciate just weirdness and being able to use games from one console on another, definitely check out the post and all of the different patches that were uploaded. And I think that the developer said that, or the main developer that's been working on it lately also said they're working on some ColecoVision stuff as well. So while I, no offense to anybody, but I only really like a handful of ColecoVision games, but they're really fun. I do enjoy playing them. So if I could have a chance to play it on my Master System, why the heck not? Here's some news that's sure to get many arcade fans excited. It looks like Yotego's made some excellent progress with his CPS-1 core for the Mister, which means that a lot of these original Capcom classic CPS-1 games are now playable through the Mister for supporters of Yotego's Patreon. The way he does it, which I think is perfectly awesome, is that in development he'll release betas to people who follow him on Patreon, and then when it's stable, then he'll do a public release on things like Mister. I think that's a great way to do it, and I don't believe the CPS-1 stuff is public yet, but it seems to be pretty close, and there's a whole bunch of games that are already compatible. You could certainly check out the list on the post that Smoke Monster made, as well as please check out the video that Smoke just posted, because I think it shows a lot of this stuff in action and explains what's going on. So thanks so much to everybody involved in the Mister project, from the main developers to people like Yotego that's porting stuff, to people like Smoke Monster that's constantly flying the flag and really showing some love, and of course to everybody that supports all of these people on Patreon, because it might not seem like much, but even giving the minimum amount and just telling your friends and having them give the minimum amount as well, that kind of puts a big dent in a lot of the cost that goes into this development. And I think people forget how quickly these things tend to get expensive. I know I certainly do. All the time I'll look at my my expense sheet and look at stuff that I bought and go, how much did I spend on that stuff for testing last month? Like, holy crap. So if you have the ability to support, please do. If you don't, that's totally understandable. Just tell some friends and maybe get them involved. And more info on all of that stuff, just retrorgb.com/mister.html, and you'd have everything you need to know about Mister, links to all of Smoke's really awesome videos, and I believe links to all of the main developers' Patreons, or at least the people that have them. Some people just don't have them at all. So thanks so much for all of this. So excited to try this out. I haven't had time to yet, but I'm really excited to see how it looks. It looks like Ben Heck got his hands on a Sega Pluto prototype and was able to get it working again. So the Sega Pluto was an unreleased model of the Saturn that had the modem and a hard drive built in, and I believe a few prototypes are out in the wild. I think only 2 were really shown, and Ben was able to open this one up and fix it. But I did have a ton of questions about all of this stuff. It seems on the inside to mostly just be similar to your average Saturn, but a different case on the outside. But what was the hard drive used for? Did it have extra RAM integrated to play the RAM cart games, or do you still need a RAM cart? Did it have the VCD module built in? So I'll admit that I didn't watch the entire video, but I was able to skip through and see it working and see some of the general work that Ben did on it. So, if you're interested in the Pluto, check it out. Or if you're only sort of interested, skip to the end like I did. Sorry, I know as somebody that posts videos, I probably shouldn't say that, but, I'm just being honest. So finally, after 9 years of doing RetroRGB, I finally added an Xbox section to the website. It was long overdue. I kept putting it off because I just wanted to go in depth and really add a bunch of stuff. But I figured for now, a really great starting point would just be to explain its video output options and how people could make the best choice for their setup. And this was kind of also sparked by I was lent a Chimeric Systems HDMI adapter, which performed really well. So I just posted a video that's connect your original Xbox to flat screen TVs. It's meant for beginners to kind of understand what to do, but also experts could at least appreciate some of the comparisons in it. And I owe a giant thank you to so many people for this one. This was a video of circumstance. I don't own an Xbox anymore. It was one of the many things I had to get rid of when I had some unfortunate stuff happen a few years ago and sold almost my whole collection for a while. So I ended up borrowing one from Destiny and Joey again. I borrow so much equipment from them. Did the video. And then the very last day when I was ready to, just before I was about to post it, I went to drop everything back off at their place, took a few more captures with some more of the games that they'd found, came home, slapped the video together, and on my way home, though, some very sick-looking person coughed pretty much on me right by my apartment. So I was all discouraged. I came back in, I finished the video, I uploaded it. And, when you're editing, a little inside info here, when you're editing, you're usually looking at a tiny little window in Premiere. You're not looking at things full screen, and my computers aren't very fast, so everything looks choppy anyway when I'm editing. And when I got the video up, all of the capture footage was bad. I didn't check it on my laptop. I felt bad because I was just sitting in their living room, tearing apart all their Xbox games, doing all these captures, and I didn't think to look at it in full screen on my laptop. Everything seemed like it was working great. So all the captures got screwed up. And then I also noticed that the aspect ratio was off on my TV. And I decided to leave that in, both because it would, not only did I not want to leave my house again, because, I was a little discouraged after being coughed on, but I also just felt that this was a mistake that anybody could make, even somebody that supposedly knows what they're doing, because my TV, or at least the one that I used to do this video, when you switch different resolutions, even on the same input, it saves the aspect ratio settings for each one. So if you have a 4:3 480i signal, you set that properly, and then it switches to 480p 16:9. That's a different setting, so you might have to go in with your remote and change the aspect ratio again. So I left it in, and I left a note about that, but I didn't know what to do about the captures, because once again, not only did I not really want to leave my house, but I also didn't want to go bother them again. So Dave Lang and my Modern Vintage Gamer came to the rescue for me. Dave had the same setup that I usually use. I used a different adapter on my laptop, but he's got a DataPath Vision E2S, and he had the Chimeric Systems adapter and obviously an Xbox. So he came to the rescue and captured the exact footage that I wanted to capture and that I tried to capture but screwed up on the first time. So that was awesome. Thanks so much. And Modern Vintage Gamer had a bunch of footage left over from some of the videos that he had been making, and he sent me some as well. I used a very cool 1080i outrun shot at the end of it just for fun. But, just once again, thank you so much to everybody that always helps me, whether it's Patreon or Floatplane support, whether it's people that are harshly critical yet always helpful in the comments. I do really appreciate those. I know sometimes I'm grumpy and I might not seem it, but I genuinely and truly do appreciate all that. And of course, everybody that takes time out of their day. I mean, Modern Vintage Gamer is a busy guy. He could have very, very easily been like, dude, I don't have time for that. And I would have totally understood, but he didn't. He took the time to upload a bunch of stuff for me. So thanks so much to everybody. Hopefully the video came out good enough to be a very good jumping off point for beginners. And I think it's mostly evergreen because the Chimeric Systems adapter might change color, change look or something. But the bottom line is still, if you have a very good analog to digital conversion, you could have an excellent experience with the Xbox on flat screen TVs. So not sure if this whole behind the scenes look at the video was interesting to all of you, or if you were all bored and were waiting for the next segment. So I'll end it right now, and feedback on that too. Do you like hearing the behind the scenes stuff in the weeklies, or would you rather just, me stick that to the Q&As and leave it off of this stuff? As always, I really just want to do what all of you would like. So thanks very much to everybody, and please check out the video because I'm really happy with how it came out. Mistakes aside. I just stumbled across a really exciting project called OpenTendo, which is an open source reverse-engineered front-loading Nintendo motherboard. And the project is awesome, and it opens up so many possibilities, and I have so many questions about things. I reached out to the developer who posted it and asked a bunch of questions and haven't heard back yet. So if I do, maybe I'll try to schedule a Skype interview or something. I would always prefer in-person interviews because Skype, you always end up talking over each other. Since so impersonal, but you can't really help it in certain situations, so it's certainly better than nothing. But I want to know everything about this thing. What motherboard revision was it based off of? Because I've been told over the years that revisions 7 and 8 are known to be very good, while 10 and 11 are known to be very noisy. How is the RF box handled? In the picture here, it shows what looks like the original RF box transferred over, but I would love to see Bordy's NES I/O board, or even the Real Phoenix's reimagining of it that's going to be a no-cut mod for front loaders. I'd love to see that integrated in as much as possible, and of course as much of that integrated on the main motherboard and on the sideboard. Audio, there's so many possibilities for audio. I'd love to see something that matches the original Famicom's quality in mixing, including the Famicom expansion audio. And then, of course, I would also love to see the ability to have good stereo separation. And I know some NES purists out there get really upset when I talk about this, but I truly think that separating the sound channels, the two sound channels, just a tiny bit to have fake stereo adds some cool depth to the games. Now, my personal opinion is I don't like it at all when it's full stereo. It's confusing because you have music coming out of one and sound effects coming out of the other. But when there's just a tiny bit of separation where it's still mostly mono, it gives a very cool effect to it, at least in my opinion. And I think if other people had the option, especially if it was just a potentiometer, just a pot or two on the board, I think people would appreciate that. And then, of course, the very big one, can projects like the high-def NES and NES RGB be integrated right into this? It would be one at a time. I don't think you could have both, but could somebody like Tim or Kevtris take this design and then integrate their boards and their circuit directly in? So you basically, at that point, you would take a front-loading Nintendo, you would desolder the CPU and PPU as well as the lockout chip if you don't already have, or if you didn't get a third-party one, and then that's pretty much it. You would be able to buy these boards fully assembled and then just insert those 3 chips, solder them in, and you're done. It would be a no-cut mod that outputted either RGB or I guess even HDMI, because you could probably put the HDMI, mini HDMI connector and fit that in where the existing holes are. So there's so much potential for this. If any developer out there is willing to and has the skills to start messing with this, please jump on it. Let me know if I could point you in the right direction of anything. I think this is such an awesome thing because it's not. If you really think about what goes into modding a Nintendo, it's an old console. So if you buy one from a game store or if you have your older one, your first thing you want to do is make sure that it's completely cleaned out and then replace all of the capacitors. And then if you're going to do any of the NES RGB mods, you're probably going to want to get the NES I/O board anyway. So take the time to desolder the RF box, add that, and then you're going to want to, after the caps are replaced and that's replaced, you still need to desolder the chips, and then you need to hand wire everything in. And at that point, it's a lot of work. I think it would be tremendously less work if you just bought a kit that was a motherboard that came with a new 72-pin adapter, and all you do is unbolt everything, desolder your 3 chips, solder them in, bolt it all back together. I think even anybody with just an average desoldering gun and average skills could probably pull that off in an hour or 2 max versus a full day if you're not skilled at this stuff to do all of that other work. So a very exciting project. I hope people really pick this up and run with it, and I hope to see lots of cool things come out as a result. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks so much to everybody that watches, listens, that participates nicely in the comments, and of course, and especially, thanks to everybody that supports on support services like Floatplane or Patreon, because without you, none of this stuff would ever be able to happen. So thank you all so much, stay safe, and I'll see you next week.